Hi there. Thank you for downloading, listening to, and watching the Lean Into Artcast, the show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take on various topics that tend to come to mind when you embark on this endeavor of communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and a teaching artist, and the other host is...
Hey, I am Rob Stenzinger, and I'm a user experience designer and facilitator, and also I like to make video games.
Good to see you again, Rob, doing another daytime recording as we continue to experiment with different recording times. Is it looking like, to you, at least right now, that switching to daytime streams and recordings is going to work a little bit better?
I think I would like to keep trying this. It feels really different because there was a certain stability to the Thursday night time, but it's also kind of neat to change it up, and I think this can work.
It feels different to me. I mean, I feel a little bit more, well, see, right now, okay, let me try to truncate a long story. I recently moved to another state because Anne got a new job at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum, and I'm living in an apartment for a year, and so I feel when we record at night, I feel an extra obligation to keep it quiet. Like when I was in my own house in the basement, I felt like I could be loud and effusive, but this feels like I feel like I have more license to be the more exuberant version of myself when we record in the daytime. I don't know if any of the leaners picked up on that in the difference between some episodes from, say, like a month ago versus now, but I feel different about it. So there's that. For better or worse, right?
Get full Jersey mode once again. No, I didn't realize it until you just said it. I think the energy is a little bit different, and part of that could be the daytime thing, or part of it could be just the that subtle difference, because I think it was pretty subtle. You've still like got lots of the Jersey energy, but it just seemed more contemplative, a little bit more. And I don't know if I'm imagining that now in hindsight, but I kind of feel like you're right. So
yeah,
this will be interesting.
Yeah, going forward, I feel like this will be a fun thing to keep playing around with, doing this daytime stream. And I know we had some people who are very loyal and committed to showing up on Thursday nights, and I'm still thinking about them as we do this, because it's like, but as we form or fall into a new schedule, maybe hopefully some of those people will be able to come back to showing up for the live streams. But every week we do the show, we pick a topic, we drill all the way down on the topic, but every once in a while we try to remind ourselves to play, because we don't want to glamorize this thing called effort. We don't want to turn burnout and exhaustion into some kind of badge of courage. Remind ourselves every once in a while to back away and charge those batteries, engage with the world in different ways of playfulness and diversion and relaxation. And those episodes we call reading, watching, playing. So it's a little bit less of a deep dive, but more of a survey of things that we're engaging with and why. And in the second half of the show, I thought, Rob, maybe we could talk a little bit about some interactions we've been having with the people who interact with the show, messages we've gotten from the leaners. What do you say?
I think it sounds awesome. I think we can't talk, you and I, about anything without having extra thoughts about it and describing it and exploring it and what have you. Even extra lean, where we're like we're plugging, hey, extra lean, it's off the cuff, and yeah, all right, here we go. Almost every time there is no romper room, playful all the time,
romper room,
silly time. We joke, and it's a little more cheeky, but we have to dive into stuff. We just have to.
Yeah, it's kind of who we are, for better or worse. I think for better. So let's.
I mean, that's what you're here for. I mean, that's on the ingredients for this product. If this is not your jam, then other products are out there.
That's true. So okay, well then I'll take that as a sign to dig into it and hit the music. There we go. We are now. That music signals the transition from opening of the show to now we're into topic time, which is reading, watching, playing. These are the episodes we do where we just talk about things that we are reading, watching, and or playing. take a couple from each category, maybe one from each category. Rob, do you want to start? What are you reading, watching, or playing, or finding helpful in your life right now?
Well, one I'm really excited about is it's a game that I think was a successful Kickstarter that that I got off of Steam, and it's called Micro Mages. And it's very minimalist. It's very like it's not just themed in a way that's nostalgic and classic and oh, this is kind of like you sort of fuzzily remember the NES being. They literally made a game that runs on the NES, and then you can buy it for other
What?
platforms.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah.
It's a cartridge that runs on the NES.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just a gimmick or whatever. I mean, what an interesting constraint. It must have been super hard to do this, in my opinion, but a fascinating exercise as far as learning tons of stuff, which they share some of the things that they learned in a video that we should totally link in the show notes too. Where, okay, so Micro Mage is the game. It's fun single player. I haven't had the chance yet to play it in multiplayer, but it's kind of couch co-op. You're this little mage that can kind of, launch a little wave of energy in any direction. But there's a lot of neat feel to it. The jumping on the character feels good. The animation is really cute and minimalist, but feels great. And you can shoot these waves in different directions. You also can get a power up to have like this long hovering jump. And you can get a power up that is just basically lets you take an extra hit. So if you have both of these things, you can take a couple of hits. And then you just need to get yourself up a level. It's a vertical scrolling thing. So if you think about like Mario Brothers, that's going to be a side scrolling and but sort of a long map to get to the end, right? And with obstacles in the way.
It reminds me of Bubble Boggle, the Bubble Bobble or Bubble Boggle, the one with the two cute little dragons from that go up and up and up, or down and down and down, which direction they go.
Totally. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and the animation is super smooth and it's super cute.
And what's neat, like you can have 4 of these little mages trying to get through the levels. And I imagine that would be pretty darn fun. So I can't wait to try that out at some point. But yeah.
So I mean, when you buy it on Steam, they mail you a cartridge?
No. No, you can play it. So right now I run it on my little Windows Surface. But yeah, it's so I don't know if they're planning on a Mac port. I don't know how they sort of wrapped their game, but you think about they built something that can run on the NES with very severe constraints of that platform. Modern computers are far more powerful, and so I imagine they have some way to wrap this game that they built and put it into an emulating environment.
Okay,
so I would guess. I don't know. Because they probably didn't recode it for all the different platforms.
So it is $10.99 currently for Windows. Well, at least the app that I'm seeing in the store says it just has the Windows logo. I don't see a Mac logo.
Yeah, I don't know if they have a Mac version plan. So I thankfully have a Windows device available, and yeah, that's it's really fun. I've actually gotten to like level 3, and it's one of those things where it gives you a little code once you like complete. There's sort of like, what was it? 3 stages or something like that. 3 stages, then a boss. That's the kind of the pattern. And the stages are randomized and different every time, I think. I'll have to. I haven't played it. I haven't gone back and replayed the different whatever. But I don't know. I wouldn't have a problem if they weren't different when you replayed. I might be recalling that part incorrectly, but anyway, it's what else is it? Oh yeah, and then how they share a bit about how they made the game. It's thinking about the constraints of like sprite optimization. Super fascinating, like 12-minute video. I recommend checking out if you're curious about it, this kind of thing at all, because I mean they sort of set it up almost like a heist in a way, where they're like, these are the constraints of this platform, and it's pretty severe. If you want to put it, make a game with like these, with these different features, there's a lot of limits you'll face. And then if you want to have essentially a sprite that moves like Mario, it takes up this much of the available memory. Well, so they decided to make their sprite smaller, the sprite being the little animated main moving character. But then there's other sprites, and there's like enemies and bosses. And so they took in the video, they go through and describe how just that first boss, if they sort of just threw out, like when I make a game like I'm working on a frame-based sprite animation for This Panda Needs You, or new games I'm working on in Unity. It's I have it easy. I just have the whole drawing, and then another drawing, and then another drawing. Yay, I just draw stuff and that displays it in sequence. That's an animation. That's fine. But here they chunk it up into these tiny 8x8 squares, right? And yeah, and they deal with, and so then they try to optimize by saying like, well, if the boss is this shape, what squares can we reuse? And so they create this map that can make tiles flipped horizontally or vertically and end up being the same to use up less memory. Anyway, fun video.
Resulting in a game that they said in the trailer video, 40 kilobits or kilobytes.
Yeah.
40 KB. Remember KB, Rob? Remember when that was like a measurement of data?
I know. Yeah. Like we're all just data wealthy, right? We're just silly rich with, we can store so much, doesn't matter. We can make tons of stuff. Recording the video, whatever. I mean, it's stunning the amount of data we can mess around with. And 40 kilobytes. What?
It does make me think of like how like in Wild West movies, somebody's like, they throw a quarter on the counter and like, oh, well, give me a bottle of whiskey and a room for the night. Like a quarter bought so much back then. It's like 40 kilobits give you an entire game.
Yeah, it's pretty stunning. Different world. And how neat that they made that part of their project, and that's a constraint.
So we'll link to that. It's a video where they explain the process.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right.
Jerzy, what do you want to talk about first?
Well, I just finished watching something. I don't get a lot of time to watch television shows as much as I would like to. And the show, I found another one on Amazon Prime. I know before I've talked about the Tick series, which I really enjoyed. And I saw people talking about this show called Good Omens, based on a Terry Pratchett, Neil Gaiman book. And I thought, okay, what the heck? A lot of people I saw a lot of fan art happening in my feeds about it. And so let's give it a try and see what it's about. Have you heard of this at all, Rob?
I've definitely heard of it. It was
okay.
Instagram marketed to me quite thoroughly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder why. Huh.
I don't know. But I've not seen it.
Okay. So, well, the premise is that it is it's, well, let's see, let me try to do I'll just go with the heart of the show, and then I can back up to like the details of the show, because like some of the details were like I found very charming, but the heart of the show is it's about an angel and a demon, and we're watching them go through history and unwittingly becoming best friends. Like that's the central, the thing that makes the show what it is. So it starts with the expulsion from Eden, and you see those two demons, like the demon and the angel, standing there on the wall as Adam and Eve are being kicked out into the world, and sort of reflecting on what just happened. And then it goes all the way up to modern day, where, and this is where the parts that I found very charming, because I think we've talked about this in the show in the past, that I have an affinity for, I don't really like horror as a genre a whole lot, except for very certain kinds of horror, right? Like I love like 50s sci-fi horror. I love corny, campy, like Hammer horror films with the bright red blood and, the kind of goofy and sometimes sexy stuff. But I don't like, murder movies. I don't really care for gory stuff. Suspense, it's okay. I could take it or leave it. But I really enjoy movies about Satan.
Okay.
And I've explained it before, like just for anybody who hasn't heard me talk about it, it's like there's something that feels mythological about a horror film about Satan, right? Because now we're talking about like the titanic powers of the heavens and like great, what's it called? Not philosophies, but like when you predict something, what is that called? I'm blanking on the word, like prophecies and things like that.
Right.
Right. So like The Prince of Darkness is my number one all-time favorite horror film, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, which is about a bunch of physicists locked up in a church as the beginning of the apocalypse is coming. And like there's all these signs that they're not seeing because they don't believe in this stuff. And there's this priest, Donald Pleasance, who's trying to warn them, but then they actually find like some kind of metaphysical arguments for what Satan is. And it's not high science, and it's not great literary storytelling, but it's the kind of horror movie that I really enjoy. And this has elements of that, in that they kind of do some send-ups to the Omen series. Are you familiar with that?
I'm aware of it. I never watched it though.
So there's 3 movies in the original Omen series, and I think the first one got remade. I can't remember if they remade any of the other ones, but the first one is about a little boy who is the Antichrist, and he is through this scheme with these corrupted. I think they're nuns and priests. They switch babies so that the Antichrist, who is born from a jackal, is given to this very influential U.S. ambassador played by Gregory Peck. And the whole movie is about him learning and not believing that his son is the son of Satan, right? And if he lets his son live, he'll bring about the apocalypse. And so he's faced with this really terrible decision, right?
Jeez.
Well, and so how badly it ends if you know that there's 3 movies, and we get all the way up to where Damien, the Antichrist, becomes president or is running for president of the United States. And it's a sometimes silly, sometimes ridiculous, but sometimes very like dreadful horror series.
I had no idea. And this has been around forever, right? I mean, so I assume they completed the series.
They completed the series in the early 80s. And I think, if I remember right, Sam Neill, is that his name? The guy from Jurassic Park played Damien as an adult. The second movie is about him as a teenager going, learning about his heritage. Like when he's a little boy, he doesn't know, but then when he's a teenager, he discovers who he is. Mm-hmm. And then in the third movie, he's accepting who he is, and now he's going about his dark father's plan. Anyway, so there's like some like asides and references to that series in that. Early on, the Antichrist is born in the story, and then the nuns have like a mix-up because another couple shows up who like their car got stuck on the road or whatever, and like she's about to have the baby, so they have like 3 babies that they're juggling, and it's like there's this mismatch, and the Antichrist, instead of going to the ambassador, goes to like this normal couple in this like small rural town kind of thing. And so the angel and the demon lose track of the baby, and meanwhile they've fallen in love with the earth. They don't want to see it destroyed, so they concoct their own scheme to try to like halt the apocalypse. But at the same time, they don't know where the Antichrist is. So there's like a little bit of like some there's a little bit of a screwball comedy element to it as well. But it's mostly the ticking heart of it is this really rich friendship between these 2 people from very different worlds. So I wound up liking it quite a bit, more than I thought I was going to. So I recommend it. Good Omens.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Huh. Yeah, okay. That's really cool. And gosh, you and even would you recommend going back and seeing the old stuff you mentioned too? Like,
I rewatched The Omen as recently as 5 years ago, and I really enjoy it. First of all, it's got Gregory Peck. Gregory Peck is awesome. It's got I always blank on the actor's name. He's this fantastic British actor. He played the bad guy in Tron. He played the devil in Time Bandits. He also played Ra's al Ghul in Batman the Animated Series. But people listening right now are shouting his name at me. I'm sorry I can't hear you because I'm in the past and you're in the future. David Warner. David Warner is his name. See, you sent your message back in time using tachyons, just like in The Prince of Darkness, and it went into my brain. So David Warner, he plays this photographer who, like, he's one of the first people who's like, he doesn't believe it, but then because he's taking these pictures and he's seeing these signs in the pictures, he starts to uncover the truth. And like, the thing to track in the Omen is once they know the truth, you know that they're going to die pretty soon, and they're going to die in a way that the photos predict. And so it's got like this kind of like, and when I was watching it with Anne, I'm like, this is one of my favorite movies, and we're watching it, and she's like, how can this be one of your favorite movies? It is so dreadful because you're watching all of this, like, as everybody gets close to the truth, they get snuffed out of the picture, right? And so you know that inevitably all of the characters we're following are going to be gone, right? Mm-hmm. And it does, and this is the thing I like about these kind of movies, is that I feel like they have license to end very unhappily. Something feels false if a movie of that nature or a story of that nature ends happily for everybody. So,
you don't feel betrayed or disappointed. You're like, it's about learning how bad does this go?
Yeah. And again, because it feels like it's like on a mythological level, I don't feel quite as burdened by that feeling. It's more like it's like going on a ride. It's like it's a safe space to feel that sort of dread. Whereas if I were to say, like, there's that movie that came out a few years ago called The Road. Once I heard the plot, I read about the plot of it, I'm like, I could not sit through that movie because that feels too close to what could be, right? This is like not a safe place for me to be as far as feeling that feeling of dread. So
yeah, that's so interesting. I'm in a similar boat where I like a recipe of a little bit of maybe plausible fantasy, but like implausible enough where it's in a different context, and so then that new context makes it safe. It's kind of like in video games, I like something like a Halo from time to time, space aliens, that kind of stuff. Whereas even something like what's it called? Just Cause or something, because I flat out don't play the ones that are hyper military because that's people, and I'm like, it's sad. I don't want to do that. And but enough fantasy, I'm like, I'm all in. It's mechanically very similar, I get it, but something that purpose is different enough. I don't know. That's crazy powerful, isn't it? Like,
it is.
Buy in or check out.
Yeah. I totally get it. There was a He-Man Tappers of Grayskull game for mobile platforms, and it was basically, you played these tapper games, right, where you're just like hitting people until they turn into coins. And you get enough coins, you can buy more power-ups or buy more characters, that kind of thing. Yep. And then if you get tired of tapping, you can always pay money so you can get your merman figure into the game. And I started playing it, and it was like, it was cute, and the designs were all really cute, and I liked seeing all the characters, but like something felt like there was a cognitive dissonance in using He-Man using his sword to like hit bad guys, right? Because he doesn't do that, right? Like that, it felt too inappropriate. And it's the same thing, like Resident Evil, which we talked about in this show before. Like, I love that game because you're shooting zombies. Like, so it hits that pituitary gland, that lizard brain thing in me, where it's like, kill enemies, right? Mm-hmm. But it's safely distant enough that my prefrontal cortex isn't like getting like, whoa, what's going on here? What are you doing? Because they're monsters.
Hey, can't we just think about this?
But there was
tried talking to the zombie.
So there was like back in like 1999, 2000, there was a PlayStation game for the Phantom Menace, and I don't know if you ever played it, but there was it was a serviceable adventure game. It wasn't super awesome. It was like 1999 PlayStation, right? So like you'd only do so much. It was good for what it was, but it wasn't like, it wasn't Mario 64. But like there was at one point I was like going through these catacombs as like Qui-Gon, and I had my lightsaber out, and I accidentally killed a non-combatant like NPC in the game, non-player character. And I was really impressed with the game designers, because then they had everybody, like all the other characters in the game, turned on Qui-Gon and said, "It's the killer. Get him. Get the killer." And so then everybody started attacking Qui-Gon, and there was like no way out of that place without fighting a whole bunch of innocent people.
Yikes.
So, yeah.
What a twist.
So yeah, I thought that was a neat thing to include in there, to like remind you, like, yeah, you know what, like what you're doing is like fun fantasy, and it's like on a different, it's detached from real life, but like, let's think about our moral choices. Maybe not everybody would enjoy that, but I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, I mean, or it's kind of like herding a chicken in Zelda.
Oh, does that happen in that?
Yeah, you get stormed by chickens. They are very vengeful.
That's awesome.
It is
And
pretty
they
awesome.
should be.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, okay.
Do you want to do one more from your list?
One more. All right.
Only one, Rob.
Which to pick?
So I felt like mine unfolded a whole bunch. I felt like there was like mine came with a basket of recommendations.
I'm gonna stick with playing, I think. And there's kind of a it's not a game at all, but I think it's really neat and helpful. And I think other folks might be in a situation where maybe you have an old game system laying around and you like the controller that worked with it, right? And if it's in the newer generations, let's say like Wii or Wii U or newer, right? Or even like PlayStation. Well, PlayStation 4, it's, the generation's been around a while, so you might have like PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. There is this USB dongle that lets you use those controllers on other systems, and it's by 8-Bit Do.
8-bit Do.
Yeah.
Play your 8-bit Do controllers, Switch Pro, Switch Joy-Cons, Xbox One, SX Bluetooth controller, PS4, PS3, Wiimote, Wii U Pro, and more wirelessly on Windows PCs, Macs, Raspberry Pi, laptops, and even Switch. Wait, wirelessly?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not about wired controllers, but there's a lot of controllers that are some form of, or that are Bluetooth essentially, and with probably some little proprietary twist or whatever. But so 8-Bit Do figured it out, and so you can pair this dongle. I've got mine right here, and it's a it looks like a little brick thing from Mario, and it's got a little button that you can use to pair. Once you pair it, you can pop it out and use that same controller in different places. It's pretty clever. So it just appears as as long as that system has a USB port, you're good. So it's neat to get reuse where, like it's kind of funny. Once in a while I get overzealous with game system peripherals. Not, I've been learning, so I'm not as crazy about it nowadays, right? But even with the Wii U, I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to use that Pro controller, and I barely use the Pro controller because the Wii U has the controller with the screen, and overall that provided a better experience for most things. So, and then you could still use your old Wiimotes. So, if you wanted to play a multiplayer game, anyway, it was rare that I needed this thing, but I like how it feels, and gives me a chance to reuse it. So I've got this old Wii U Pro controller, and it's it's got new work, and it works great.
Have they ever has any company made a wireless version of the GameCube controller? I could probably just do an internet search. I just didn't know if there was one that you had seen.
I see that the GameCube controller. Are you a big fan of the GameCube's?
That was my number one favorite controller of all time. I loved that controller.
You're not alone. It's just interesting. It's like there are that's so fascinating. So what is it about it?
I don't know, something about the way it felt in the hand. The button configuration felt very intuitive and natural. I loved that, like, instead of being like 4 little buttons on the right hand side, it was like one, like the buttons had different sizes. It was very easy to like move my thumb across those buttons to know which ones.
Yeah, there's 3 sort of slightly curved oval buttons, right? So they're kind of ovals with flat sides or whatever. So they kind of go around the circle, but then there's the large button in the middle of the circle. And so it's still 4 buttons, but it does feel different. And I think you're right that it reduces some of the ambiguity. As someone who hops from a couple of different game systems, when I go from the Nintendo world to the Sony or Microsoft world, so challenging because they have that same 4 button arrangement. X, Y, and A, B, and or I forget PlayStation. It's whatever. It's what triangles, X, 0, triangle, square, right? Conceptually similar. PlayStation and Microsoft feel the same. button layouts work the same. It's inverted in the world of Nintendo. So anyway, so I'm always, dealing with that, but like a controller that actually doesn't really look the same, so you wouldn't expect it to behave the same. I think that's pretty smart, actually.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of platform hopping when I was really playing games. I was mostly in the GameCube world, so I spent a lot of time with that controller. And I remember when it switched to, what was the next one? The next one was the Wii, right? Wii controller was fine. It was okay. It felt like, okay, well, I got the hang of it, okay, but it still doesn't, like when I play my Metroid games on my Wii, I break out my GameCube controllers to do it because it just feels so much better on that for me.
Nice.
So.
Well, you are not alone. There are a lot of fans of it, and so I don't know if there's a wireless solution, what have you. But wait a minute, let's see. I wonder. Remember the Wavebird?
No.
Wait. Oh, okay. So there was a wireless controller for the GameCube.
Oh.
Called the Wavebird.
Okay.
Yeah.
Capturing that to look it up later.
So I wouldn't be surprised. I wonder if the 8BitDo thing works with a Wavebird.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. All right. So that's really handy. And then if there's I think just a side comment and how like what I'm reading or watching or playing, totally they feed in on one another. Where I ended up playing a lot of fighting games in recent weeks, just diving in here and there. I have enthusiasm, but I'm not like a wizard at them or anything. And they're like one that was pretty great. It was Marvel versus Capcom Infinite. And I've been playing that and playing other fighting games, even like classic ones, because of the anime High Score Girl. And they come up a lot in that show. And which that show is awesome. I do recommend it. It's very, very cute and sweet, where some kids sort of come of age where they have different backgrounds and interests, but like they both care a lot about, playing video games. And it's so ridiculously hit me between the eyes nostalgic as far as all the games that they're talking about and choosing. But anyway.
So we're looking at it now, Marvel versus Capcom.
Marvel versus Capcom. So what I enjoyed is it has a very satisfying single player experience. I like games with a great single player experience. I don't play online that much unless I'm playing with friends. And it's like a clever, very quirky twist on sort of the big Marvel story that recently happened in theaters, right? Those 22 movies that were basically about the Infinity Stones. And so this is another take on that, except with, fun, a mix of characters from the universe of Capcom fighting games. Well, actually Capcom games, right? Because there's even like Arthur the King from
Ghouls and Ghosts. Yeah.
Going against like Ultron, which is, it's just a fun mashup. And but they do it with some silliness, but pretty sincere. Like they're into the bit, the whole thing. And the story it's just delightful. And they did something where I end up finding just a couple of characters I get attached to. And unless I'm really wanting to study a fighting game, I don't play any other characters. I just stick with that. With this conceit, they plop you in scenarios and you end up playing different characters. And I got exposed to a lot more of the game because of that. So
neat.
And the scenes are just funny, and it's a great, it's like an action adventure, but played out as a fighting game.
Oh, that's really neat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, we are in this, like, I mean, one of the upsides, if there are any, to all of these media consolidations is that we're in this golden period of crossover where everything's crossing over with everything, and you get to see Ghost Rider interacting with characters from, what was that game, Dark Stalkers. Yeah.
yeah, that's pretty darn fun.
Yeah, and Mega Man and Rocket Raccoon hanging out together. It was in the video that we were showing. So yeah, That is pretty cool. Okay, so Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. So, are we ready to do the break before we go into responding to leaner comments?
That sounds wonderful. Looking forward to chatting about those comments.
Cool. All right. So in a minute and 30 seconds, we're going to respond to some different things that people have been sending us via YouTube comments, Patreon comments, and so on. And by the way, you can always send us your reading, watching, playing via an email or comments on the YouTube video, and we can bring them into the second half of future reading, watching, playing episodes. But before we do that, we have to thank some people who make the show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Whoop! I was trying to hit the music. There we go. Patreon.com/LeadWithHeart is the website. And what is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you say, hey, I really enjoy the Lead Into Art cast, I believe in Jerzy, I believe in Rob, I believe in what they do, you can support us for as little as $1 a month on Patreon.com/LeadIntoArt. And I want to thank 5 people who've been doing exactly that. First up, Rachel Ross. Thank you, Rachel, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Rachel on Twitter at NYC at TERIS. Also, thank you to India Swift. You can find India on Twitter at Old Swifty. Thank you, India. And Becca Hilburn, who gets a lot of mentions on the show. She does a whole bunch of watercolor tutorials on YouTube. You can find Becca on Twitter and on all platforms at Natto Soup. Also, Catherine Sugru. Thank you, Catherine, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Catherine on Twitter at Cat with a K, SOOGROO, Cat Sugru. Get it? And finally, Ashley Knapp. Thank you, Ashley, for supporting us for as long as you have. You can find Ashley on Twitter at ControlAltLead. And you can join them all at patreon.com/LeanIntoArt, where you will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record only for people who support us on Patreon. Those posts become an open mic thread where you can talk about whatever you want in a safe space with other fellow leaners. Patreon.com/LeanIntoArt. Thank you to everybody who's been supporting us there. It means a lot.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for those awesome reads, Jerzy.
Yeah,
You're
welcome.
You do that so well.
Just a lot of practice, right?
Yeah.
and I do try to I've only had a couple different ambitions in life. I was talking about this at A2CAF, is that my range of interest is, when you really think about it, it's exceedingly narrow. Like, I like comics, I like communicating visually, I like helping and working with kids, I like my wife, and that's pretty much it. But there was these other different times in my life where, when I was in second grade, before I decided I wanted to make comics, I thought I wanted to be a puppeteer, and I used to put on puppet shows for my second grade classroom every Friday. And I don't remember how that came about. It was too long ago now for me to remember how that was negotiated, but I do remember doing it. Every Friday after lunch, I got to do a short puppet show. And then there was a brief time where I thought I wanted to be an astronomer, because I was watching Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and I was really moved by his kind of storytelling. But then when I was in my early 20s, I worked at a radio station for a little while. It's just a part-time job, and I had to do reads for the weather and for the bit at the end of radio commercials where they do the terms and conditions really fast.
Really?
Yeah, I actually.
Yeah, huh.
I got to do that for a short time, and I really got a kick out of it because I felt like this was something that I didn't know. I knew I was good at talking fast because I'd practiced it as a kid, because I was really I thought the Micro Machine guy was really cool. So this is a job I showed up to that was oh, I could do this and I can do it good, and I did a good job of it. And I thought it would be fun to do radio reads. So I'm thinking about that when I'm doing the ad read for this. Is this is me exploring that one little tangential side dream that I had for a very short time. But truth be told, most of the time when I was working at the radio station, I was drawing comics.
Okay. Sounds like a pretty good gig.
Yeah, mostly it was just me just doing a couple of reads, and then I would turn on the satellite feed and then turn it down to play a couple of commercial carts. So I didn't really do much there. Just ate candy bars and drew comics. It was a cushy gig. Okay, so what we're supposed to be doing some reads. Oh, I'm supposed to hit some. I was looking for music to hit for this next part of the show. How about we do this? It's been a while. So we've had some Robotech on the show. Macross City. Now we're in the second half for real. So speaking of reads, what were you gonna say, Rob?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so there are a lot of ways people can get a hold of us and throw their thoughts, right? So we've got an email that we don't, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people ping us there. It's like they might know our other emails or whatever, but like there's what, oh no, we mentioned it in the closing. I don't remember it like with active current memory because we play a recording that I did about 8 years ago about leaners aren't wieners. And there's so what is it? leanintoart@gmail.com. And then there's the a little easier way is the contact form on the site, leanintoart.com/contact. And then there's of course like YouTube comments. And then there's the patron methods, right? So commenting on an episode if you're a patron, sending a message in there, just sort of message thing, right? And then of course, yeah, Twitter, blah blah blah. So there's just a bunch of different options for sending things at us worth highlighting. We check them all, but like I think some we check more frequently and naturally than others.
And because there's all these different ways, it's challenging sometimes for us to respond to all of them in a timely manner. That was another reason that I collected some of them so that we could respond. Like one of the messages we got is like 2 months old, and I didn't respond to it at all. And it's like, okay, well, let's do it on the show, and let's thank some people who are taking the time out of their day to interact with us. Yeah, we also got some private Patreon messages that we need to like make sure that we find some way to let them know, for them to let us know whether or not it's okay to read them on the air.
Agreed. Yeah, exactly. So, right, the more private the context, the message is shared, then we really need to know if it's okay to read that on the air.
Yeah.
And that's even a little check box on the contact form. So,
Yep.
Yeah, pretty flexible. But yeah, thanks for gathering these, Jerzy.
Yeah.
Should we get into some?
Yeah, I gathered for this one. I gathered public comments, like stuff that anybody can see. So even if it was a Patreon comment, but it was on a public post, so that way I don't feel like I'm being out of line here. So first up from Lead Into Art episode 276, problem solving odds and ends, which we did last week. Joseph Coco chimed in and said, "Good luck with the watercolor comic," because I mentioned that that's the next thing I want to try is see if I can do an entire comic in like watercolor on paper. And he was very kind to remind me, you can always do digital corrections. That's true. I could. So that'll take the sting out of the actual throwing down the paints on the lines. And then he reminds me regarding Windows and files being PDF'd out of order. So this is another thing I talked about, like grabbing a bunch of files in the Finder window, or what do they call it in Windows? The equivalent of the Finder window, like the folder view. In like just grouping them and then just like exporting them as a PDF, I was getting pages out of order. So he says, I recommend sorting alphabetically, naming them in the order you want alphabetically. Select all files in the Explorer, hold Control and click the first file to unselect it. Hold Control and click the first file again to select it. All files should be selected now with your file cursor, that faint dotted outline around the file name, on the first file. Then right-click the first file and either print to PDF or select Create PDF. This is the only method that always works right for me. Thank you, Joseph. I will try that. That is exceedingly helpful. But then he also responded to my anger, my frothing rage at scanning. He says, we have an Epson expression 11000XL. It takes a while to scan, but no half of page scans. It's pretty pricey and big, though. I'd recommend coercing the library into getting one. If you do continue scanning half pages, though, why not create a spreadsheet to keep you on track, and then you can listen to a podcast or whatever without turning into old man yells at technology.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, some tools, I get it. I empathize with your frustration, Jerzy, and as I do also turn into old man yelling at technology. But which for me, I'll look at the clock and think, well, do I have time to automate this? Can I think of a way to do, and then I might feel some satisfaction building something that I probably could have just ignored automating it and finished the job without it. But I feel like I'm more correct at the end of the day. Like this thing didn't beat me. I automated it. Haha. Anyway. But that's funny. So how large is an Epson Expression 11,000 XL? 11,000 XL. That sounds big.
I'm guessing it can do tabloid, which is 11.5 by 17 in American dimensions. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking at just getting a bigger scanner. But I do like the idea of having some kind of thing, some kind of list to tick off to let me know where I am in the list, like a spreadsheet, like you said, or even like maybe an index card where I write down the names of all the different pages I have to scan so I can like check off where I am at any given time. Because I do lose track if I'm not, like when I'm actually naming the files. So
checklist, that's really smart. If I have a repetitive task, anything close to that, I do like to use a checklist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to read the next comment?
Okay. So there's a really short one here from Song Dance Geisha. Jerzy, where's the He-Man throw? I'm gone a few weeks and everything is different.
Yep. No He-Man throw behind me anymore. This is kind of a drag because, I don't have my green room studio anymore where I had like an entire room of just for my stuff. If you haven't checked into the show in a while, I don't live in Ann Arbor anymore. I live in Columbus, Ohio now. My wife got a job at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum on the campus of OSU, Ohio State University, which means that we moved to Columbus, and we're currently living in an apartment while we shop around for houses. And apartments aren't as big as houses often, at least the apartments we could afford. So our studio is about 2/3 the size of my old studio, but both of our stuff is in it, which means some things had to go. Now, however, we did do an episode on this, like setting up studios recently. I showed this. Like I do have some of my stuff out. Let me see if I can get a shot of it. There's right next to my desk. I've got some of my He-Man stuff is out, but for the most part, the He-Man throw is now in our living room, which is on a chair that I use to when I need to feel safe while I'm watching TV. I cover up with that, so it's getting used a little bit more than it used to, at least, because before it was just in like on the futon that was in my art studio. So there's the longish answer to that comment. But I'm glad you're paying attention. that you noticing the differences.
Honestly, your new studio has plenty of characters. It seems so just set up to get stuff done, right? And I guess that's a pretty different thing. It's like there are workstations behind you, and can't really tell a sense of scale. But like your other studio was quite a library of stuff. If I had to pick one thing that I miss, not that anyone asked, it's the SDF-1 that was on the shelf that I would stare at once in a while. You thought I was looking at you, Jerzy, but no. Looking at that SDF-1.
Which, there's a bunch of boxes in our laundry room right now that are just all that stuff from the green room studio. They're just staying in boxes until we get a house, because there just isn't the space, and also I don't want to 1 year later go through the whole business of packing all back up again. Let's leave it in the boxes. It's fine. It doesn't feel quite as joyful as it did before. It feels a little bit more utilitarian in here, but because like as you've pointed out, like the way Ann and I do our house, it's almost like we love dusting.
Yeah, I mean, you curate a space so amazingly well. I have been and am inspired anytime I've come to visit. It's there is amazing vignettes everywhere, and that is super cool. But that's not what I meant as far as my comment about the stuff around you to work. I have a huge affection for places to work. You have problem-solving devices all around you that seem very capable and useful, and like you can make neat things with that, and that to me is joyful. So in
a different way, right? I mean, yes, we've got like right there is our letterpress that we use to do comics and cards with, and then like right over there's the art cart with a whole bunch of art supplies and sketchbooks, and even that tool cabinet. It does have tools in it, but it also has art supplies in it, and then aprons for doing messy work up there, right? So yeah,
That's a good idea.
just not as much, because like my green room was both a place to play and a place to work. This feels much more like the work is favored in place of play. Like Ann and I don't hang out in here, right? This
Gotcha.
when I'm not working, I'm not in this room. So that feels different too. There we go again. Rob found a little mini essay to go down just from a simple comment.
It's true. It's only 2 sentences. Here we are, 5 minutes later. How about let's see. Should we try to do a like speed round?
Sure.
I don't know. That way we can hit a few more comments.
Yes.
All right. So I'll do another one since
Okay.
this one is so let's see if it makes sense to do them both at the same time or just one at a time. But because we have 2 comments about Lean Into Art number 275, reflecting on A2CAF. And first one is actually from Joseph Coco. Once again, Becca and I encouraged a bunch of the young artists who were attending the show to talk to programming about how they could table next year. Hopefully some of them will. I think so, since this year Becca traded comics with some younger tabling artists who she knew were attendees in previous years. So yeah, it speaks to the sort of the lineage of that event.
Yeah. That's the thing you hope for, right? You hope that like the culture will engender itself and repeat itself, and form its own momentum in the people who show up, who buy into the culture of the show, right?
It makes propagates. A lot of sense. You go to something like that, and you see people who are at all these different stages, but sort of together, and you think, I bet there may be a spot for me here. Like I'm excited about making comics, and you can kind of, I think you can see yourself at that event.
Yeah. That's the hope anyway, and it's partially in response to something that I think Comic Cons suffered from in the past, is a sense of competition. Like it would be I'm talking like 15 years ago when you go to Comic Cons, there was this unspoken vibe of we're all competing for the same audience together. And if you think about it, that makes sense, given that at that time Diamond Distribution was like the only channel to get your comics from. Comic stores were these little tiny places, and there weren't many of them in order to be able to get comics. So like you're competing for like very limited shelf space. Now, post internet, post book publishers picking up comic books, it feels like the scarcity has almost evaporated. Like you can get your stuff to anybody if you find a creative way to do it. So we're not competing anymore, and we should be sharing resources with one another to build each other up, because there's plenty for all. And I feel like that's the vibe we tried to engender at A2CAF. And I feel like people like Becca show up and they say like, yes, I believe in that too. Becca's been pursuing it in her own way. Natto Soup again, mentioned her in the ad spot. And so you find allies in that way to help you propagate that message going forward. So that's cool.
That is
good for
awesome.
both of them.
So, all right, next comment. Courtney Hahn. I've been talking to my local galleries and library to try to start something like this. Speaking of A2CAF, we talked a lot in the episode about, well, how could someone go about replicating this? Because what if there's nothing like it in your area, which chances are there's not. So if you feel so inspired, it's possible to make it happen. And I enjoyed that story a lot too, where you describing how the first event, it just made it seem more possible and less daunting.
Yeah.
Still awesome, but like possible, right? So continuing with Courtney's comments. Everyone wants it, but no one's done anything. This podcast really helped me understand the mentality I gotta have to make something like A2CAF. Also, Rob missed you this year, which is really sweet. I missed you, Courtney, and I missed going, and oh shucks.
See, we did. Everybody did. Your presence adds something to the show. But yeah, like to Courtney's comment about like, it's not enough to ask around and have everybody go, yeah, that would be great. And then what, right? Like, and the thing that, just to summarize what we did with A2CAF and Kids Read Comics, is we compartmentalized, right? It's like, well, I can do this if I can find somebody to do that, right? Like, I knew that I could develop the programming and I could help find the people to do the programming, but I don't know where to get funding to get tables and chairs. Where do we find a rental space, right? Okay, well, now let's get a librarian in here so that they can help with that, right? I am really great in person at talking with you about like sharing the vision of something, but I'm not a writer, and I dread writing emails so much, so much. I almost choke when I write emails. It's so hard for me to do. But Dan Mishkin, man, that guy can do guest relations in person and in text so beautifully, and he can diffuse so many uncomfortable situations. He can smooth over misunderstandings so thoughtfully and inclusively. Yes, he should be our front man, things like that. A lot of people that we wanted to bring to the show wanted somebody to sell their books for them, because that's the way book publishing works in outside of diamond distribution. Like, you don't want to do the hand selling, you hire a bookseller to do it. Okay, well, we can find a bookseller. So it's about like looking for establishing the desire is one thing, but then like fulfilling the needs is a totally different thing, and that's where you got to find partners, and you got to do some legwork to do that. And if you can make their contribution discreet, so you're not asking too much of them, you're just saying like, can you do this one thing? Then it's a lot easier to get them to yes. Right. So
that's a pretty great addendum to that episode. It's like,
cool.
Yeah, the advice for forming the team. Neat. Well, what do you think? We have one more comment here, but should we save that for after
final thought?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thought?
Yeah. Final thought will be final comment. We'll do that. Okay. So in about 2 minutes, maybe a minute, I'm going to try to keep it in a minute and a half. We're going to come back and, finish off our discussion with one more thought from the leaners. But before we do that, we got to thank some people who make the show possible. Those people happen to be us. We make the show possible. We make stuff, and then we think about the stuff we make, and we bring those thoughts to this podcast that we do every week. And the thing that I made that I hope you will check out is, and it just dropped today, maybe yesterday, a comic that I drew like 2 years ago is finally in print. Boulder and Fleet, Mining for Trouble. And it is a 92-page trade paperback. You can get it on indieplanet.com. And it's the ongoing story of my adventurers for hire, a ambitious and cheeky bird who has partnered up with a very gentle bear. So gentle, in fact, that he doesn't really like to fight, which makes it harder to go on adventures, because he's going to try to find the peaceful solution and maybe try to make the bad guys his friends. Which, if you're trying to be like a very famous adventurer, it's kind of, the people who befriend people aren't usually like celebrated heroes. Like, if you think about like famous heroes in movies and stories, it's usually like this crusader who conquers bad guys. Indiana Jones isn't like a hero because he got Mola Ram to be nice. He threw Mola Ram to some alligators or crocodiles, whichever they were, right? So there's a challenge in that, and that's part of like the dynamism of the story for me, is like, how can you explore like really awesome action adventure but with a peaceful message? And so in Mining for Trouble, they come across some mineral folk, these rock creatures who eat precious metals, who have taken over a mine and are threatening the miners so that they can eat all the precious metals, and a fight ensues. And you can find it at indieplanet.com. You can just do a search for Boulder and Fleet, or do a search for my name, and you will find it. It is, what is the price on it? It is $15.99, 92-page trade paperback, full color, and it is good for kids, and I would also say good for adults if you like lighthearted, cute action adventure. So,
wow,
Rob, you want to?
Awesome. I am so glad to see this in print. It looks beautiful, and can't wait to get a copy.
Thanks.
Super cool. So I do have something to briefly mention. I have, there's a workshop that I put together recently. It's called Drawing User Journey Maps to Design User Experiences and to Collaborate, where, let's say, user journey map sounds like, hey, no big deal. It's of course, when you're making making a product or a service, you think of like, well, okay, who am I making this for? You think about your audience, and even thinking about like, well, what's it like for them before they they encounter your thing, and then when they first encounter it, but then along the line, you think of these steps and their journey, and that's pretty interesting and useful, and maybe pretty obvious. But then there's a lot more to it if you want to sort of gather more ideas and get a really deep whole picture and collaborate, or even working on your own. So just wearing different hats, saying like, well, from a business perspective, and add some layer of like, well, this is, we would like to have this be fewer steps, and how could we do that? How does this affect the user? All this kind of stuff, and you add the business layer, but then you can add an engineering or a design or a making layer, right? And then that gives you more insight to, it'd be, we have this thing on hand, let's use that, versus we could build this other thing, and what have you. You get to think about making stuff, but then you can think about like, well, what else do you know about your design world, your users, and make sure that you have all this context there too. So you're really bringing together voices, either all the voices in your head together, or you're bringing in the voices of the people you're working with on this same journey, getting them on the same page at the same time. And then you can think about, well, what's obvious to do next with this product or service? What should you build first if it's new? What should you improve first if it exists already? So drawing user journey maps is a pretty handy collaborative tool, and you can take this workshop I put together. It's only 47 minutes, and it's divided up into, I think, like 9 little sections, and easy to get through and bite-sized and whatnot, all available at this place called Skillshare. And so Skillshare, it's kind of like a Netflix for learning stuff, and a lot of folks who are passionate about different things put together videos. And so when you go to Skillshare, you have this monthly fee, or you can pay it once a year, whatever. And then you have access to all this stuff, not just my workshop. That's kind of neat. So if you would like to explore this, check it out, and go to robstenzinger.com. There's an easy link right on that page with an image linking, to this workshop, drawing user journey maps. And there's a sign up page where you can get 2 months of Skillshare for free. So pretty easy, and check it out.
There we go, robstenzinger.com. And look right at the bottom, right next to the Lean Into Art tile is where you'll find it. Mm-hmm. All right, but if you're here because you like the way we think about stuff and you're not so interested in the stuff we make, fair enough. The show is the thing we make. There's more things like it at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained episodes of like classes that we've done. You can download at a price of your choosing, even free. I know people haven't checked these out yet because every week I get at least 1 or 2 downloads of some of the workshops I have on there. So you can check out comics classes and other user, let's go right here. Storytellers UI tools, turning jokes into comics, Laughing Yeti, Monkey Spaghetti, and making video games from your creator-owned comics. You can download them at a price if you're choosing. leanintoart.com/workshops. If you're watching the video on YouTube, giving us a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to it in a podcast app, or a podcast catcher, whatever they call them, places where they aggregate podcasts, giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to us helps more people find the show as well. That's important information to get into the algorithms that, like, hey, I think this thing is good enough to say that 5 stars. That helps them promote the platforms to promote our show to a wider audience so that more people can come in here and make the show more sustainable. And we thank everybody who has been doing exactly that. It means a lot to us.
Sure does.
All right.
Okay. So final comment, huh?
Final comment. Yeah. This goes back a ways. This is a few months old. This is from episode 269, lettering and sound design in Clip Studio Paint, where I did some demos of, drawing in CSP and how I do sound effects. And Stephen Stone Bush, who is a Patreon supporter, said, "Thanks for the demo tutorial. Been using Photoshop since I'm comfortable with it for comic style art. And so far, it's never really clicked for me. But after seeing that short demo on Clip Studio Paint, I had a shut up and take my money moment, to quote Rob from the episode. Does anyone have any advice on tutorial content concerning using the drawing tools, brush settings, and shortcuts? There's an overwhelming amount of tutorials on the subject out there. Thanks." Thank you, Stephen. And yeah, you're right. I mean, if you just start doing searches for Clip Studio Paint tutorials, there is a lot out there, which is a good thing, but it also means that, like, you got a lot to sift through, and not everybody's going to, like, talk about it and get to, like, your specific concern right away. It does make it challenging. So let's see if I've got it pulled up. I actually had the video pulled up here. Yeah. Fortunately, there was a series of videos created for what before Clip Studio Paint was called Clip Studio Paint. It was called Manga Studio. Super confusing, long story, but now it's CSP. But it used to be called Manga Studio. And when they had Manga Studio available, or when it was called that, Smith Micro, the company who makes the software, had released a series of videos with tutorials on using Manga Studio 5. And it was by a guy named Doug Hills. And they are very succinct. They are specific. They're very specific in their realms of concern. So, like, I'll link to it in the show notes. There is a 10-minute video on how to use custom brushes and how to make custom brushes in Manga Studio. I double checked the video with my version of CSP at the time of this recording, and the settings, the menus are exactly the same. So it is absolutely up to date as of 2019. But I would dig through all of those. If you're very new to Clip Studio Paint, Doug Hills does a really good job of getting to the point of what he's trying to teach you, explaining all of the reasons why he's doing what he's doing. And it, like I said, it's very pithy and succinct. It's not a 2-hour-long video like what we did, where you're going to have, it's going to be hit or miss. What are we going to actually show you about how to actually use the application? And that's why I felt like that episode was more of one we did was like an overview to say, here's some of the things you can do, and here's a very specific use case of how I use it to solve my problems. But there's no way we can cover everything, and that's where doing a short series like this is really super useful. So Doug Hills, and it's the official Smith Micrographics account on YouTube, will be a great starting place.
Yeah, that is pretty handy. It is interesting that it's almost like finding useful information on a video game you're working to get past. And it's one of those topics where lots of people share their thoughts.
And in a variety of ways, right? Like you might find a video game podcast about like a walkthrough of what you're trying to do, and it's the style of this one is two buddies giving each other the business while also getting to the point of getting to the gameplay, which can be very entertaining and can be like have its own value in that way. But if you're like, I just think of the time when I had to replace the faucet in my kitchen sink, and it was such a painful moment that it changed the way I thought about doing the Lean Into Art cast, because I went to YouTube going like, how do I switch out my faucet? And I found all these videos where it'd be like the guy's trying to sell me on his personality first, or this guy would be like, here's all the different kind of wrenches that you're going to use today. And I was like, I get the value of that kind of prep, but like, here's my specific problem. Like this gasket won't fit here. Why is it not working? Right? Like, video is not awesome at attending to really specific use cases like that, right? Because like if I would have had a plumber friend come over, he'd be like, oh, I know why, because I have all this wide experience that I can sift through and scan through really quickly. Whereas you don't necessarily have that experience or expertise, so you can't scan through a video to know which part you want to get to and have the context of why this is the right solution, right?
Really good point. And another twist in this whole thing where I don't know how this happens, but sometimes in Google search results, in a longer video, Google will say, go to this section, we'll link to a portion of it.
Oh, that's cool.
And whatever cleverness or magic that is working there, because I don't know if it's building off of how people are sharing and talking about a thing and then linking to that, because you can pretty easily share links that jump to any section of a video.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, somehow they can show up in Google search results, which is pretty handy, because maybe it just gets you the answer, right? That's what you need, because that's pretty magical. Otherwise you still have some hunting as you're trying to you're going through a list of like, well, this one seems like maybe, try it, nope, until finally find a match. And I don't know, for better or for worse, Google intelligence there.
Well, that's a step in the right direction, at least. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I again, like Doug, did I say Doug Hills? Is that how you say it? Yeah, Doug Hills is like I think probably still the best place to start if you're brand new to Clip Studio Paint and you have some Photoshop experience. So like the transition shouldn't be too difficult. But there are the thing that I have to I always wind up having to teach people when I teach Clip Studio Paint classes is that it does such a good job of getting the interface the heck out of your way so you can draw that sometimes you have to go down the primrose path to find where they've nested this weird little menu, right? And it's not always obvious where those menus are. So
no, and like anything, you pick up on patterns where there's the general. It's like the tools have a couple layers of settings and options, and they're kind of grouped in a way where it's like, oh, you're generally at this brush, but then there's a way to jump around and select more specific brush and a way to have settings. I don't know, and you get used to that, but even then, I remember I had a bunch of aha experiences during the episode that you were demoing. So I think part of what I mentioned, the Google search result too, is like, I love it when there are videos that just do the great job, like Doug Hill's videos, but it'd be neat if somehow the Google Mind had links to our episodes and things
that would index them for us.
Because I know we have handy tips here and there, but like, and especially anytime where we've said that's a good T-shirt idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice.
I would buy a sandwich for an algorithm that could tell me this, So anyway.
Are you listening, Google? There's a sandwich in it for you.
Honestly. I would do it. So
good to know.
Yep.
I think we did a podcast, Rob. What do you think?
I think so. That was fun. Thanks for everyone who shared their thoughts in the comments. And keep on doing it. We see it. We appreciate it, and would love to bring it to the show from time to time.
And we record the show weekly, and we stream it live over YouTube for now. I'm still looking at other options on that as we approach the end of Hangouts on Air. We record it live and then collect it as a podcast at leanintowart.com and patreon.com/leanintowart. We'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintowart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintowart.com, and I'm also on Instagram as Rob Stenzinger.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintowart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintowart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.